This is Empty the Bench with Tom Albano.
The fact that LeBron thinks, it's not so much a big deal. This whole situation where he's being favoritized and the NBA is just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. When the NBA has handled, and Nick Federa, you said this last week, they have handled the COVID situation quite possibly the worst.
Nick Morganson.
Major League Baseball is so good at hiding things under the rug that they'll just keep sweeping and sweeping and sweeping. The problem is they're going to hit the dust bunny at one point once they get to sweeping.
And Nick Federa.
He's basically coming out to tell us that he's invested most of his money in Buttcoin.
Empty the Bench starts now.
LeBron James lives rent-free in Adam Silver's head. LeBron James also now resides at home, which makes Nick Morganson a very happy man. This is probably... I'm surprised you haven't talked with me about potentially changing this episode into a whole celebration for yourself.
Don't worry, I'm throwing a parade here in Long Island, so I'm good.
Okay, so welcome to episode 88 of Empty the Bench. Tom Albano here along with Nick Morganson. We have quite the variety of sports topics today. Some more serious than others, and in some cases, stuff that we wouldn't normally be talking about. It's not every show that we're talking about, like tennis, the WWE, horse racing.
I'm sorry, did I hit the Twilight Zone or something in this episode? Because, like you just said, tennis, horseback riding, WWE. What's next? Are we going to talk tiddlywinks?
You never know. Hey, you never know. The NFL might actually go with the idea of having the London Silly Nannies as a team next.
Don't give Roger Goodell any ideas. It might happen.
Hey, they've been pushing for London for how long now?
Since the inception?
Maybe. All right. So let's get into it. Obviously, we're going to talk about some basketball. We're going to talk about not just the playoffs, but we're talking about some big coaching changes. One earlier this week and a couple that have just broken within the last 24 hours. We'll talk about Medina Spirit. We'll talk about even the WWE and a potential sale.
By the way, you got that wrong. It's horse you ride in on.
Horse you rode in on.
Yeah.
Horse you rode in on. Shout out Colin Mockery. All right. Let's, however, get into the one serious topic of today's episode, and it is from the tennis world. Naomi Osaka, of course, was forced to pretty much say au revoir to the French Open after being fined for not talking to the media post-match. She actually got fined, what was it, Nick? Because you're the tennis guy in the show, $15,000?
$15,000 and I've had very strong opinions about this the last couple of days, where it seems very odd. We're seeing with athletes that mental health is a major, major, major problem. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic is just raising the issue even higher. And eventually what happens is Naomi Osaka, let's take a step back. So she won the U.S. Open in 2018, beating Serena Williams on the home turf here in the U.S. And she openly admits after winning the U.S. Open that she's had depression and she faces anxiety.
Well, Naomi Osaka has never really had, let's face it, a fair shake when it comes to tennis fans, maybe even the tennis media. I know, because I go back to the first controversy with her and Williams, when Williams, wasn't it like some default?
Well, Serena was being typical Serena on the court, where the umpires were not going her way. It was actually chronicled after that match that the referee kind of had some issues, and she's had some history with that referee in the matches in the past. So something happened. She made a gesture or something towards the official. She already got one warning for, I think it was a coaching violation, even though I think it was proven afterwards that it wasn't a coaching violation.
But in terms of that match, it wasn't like Williams was ahead. It was Osaka was putting on a heck of a performance, if I'm not mistaken.
Osaka is the rising star of the women's tennis tour.
I'll be honest with you. Just because I'm not as big into the tennis as you are, I'll go one step further. I think she's overtaking the Williams sisters in terms of a today's star.
Yes.
The Williams sisters to me feels like late 90s, early 2000s through the mid this decade. It feels like the last 2 or 3 years, Osaka has kind of been the female star of the tennis world. At least she should be.
I would say the Williams sisters, like you said, was the 90s and the early 2000s. When we grew up, that was kind of the, I don't know what you want to say, the age of
them, Maria Sharapova.
Yeah. Big time athletes that were when we were at our teen years and younger. And now Naomi Osaka, and not just from the standpoint of on the court, off the court as well. I think she made close to $50 million last year total between on and off endorsements and on the court. And also, you could tell that the whole tour got behind Naomi Osaka because the sponsors came out and said, "Oh, we'll pay that. We'll pay that."
Right. Well, it goes. I would say because tennis and golf are kind of on the same level of popularity, and we talk about it with golf all the time. Now that Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, like they just Woods won a major a couple of years ago. He won the Masters. Phil Mickelson just won the PGA title, but you're not seeing them being their prime where they were winning basically everything. Nowadays, it's Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy, and it's just you need. As time goes on, sports needs new stars. Mike Trout may be the face of baseball since 2012, but even then, there's going to be a point where he's going to retire and the game is still going to go on. Actually, right now, Fernando Tatis Jr. might be overtaking him as a face of baseball, but there will be a time where he's faded out. As sports moves on, even the trains keep rolling, even though the stars go away. But that means you always need new stars. And Naomi Osaka, I think, sorry to keep interrupting, is kind of that star of tennis now.
Right. I would say she's the number one on the women's tour. I mean, it's interesting because you still have old geezers like Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. Who,
the guys that will never seem they're going to go away.
Well, Roger just came back from a massive reconstructive surgery, and he's back playing at the French Open again. Mm-hmm. What I was going to say earlier, I think Tatis has actually overtaken Trout as the major star in Major League Baseball. Trout is kind of fallen off between the injuries and the Angels just not going anywhere. The Padres are the big, young, all-star team of the future, I think, and they could be of the next decade if they just keep going the way they go. And to go back to the golf point, you're talking about guys like Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka, and I don't know if you saw it over the past couple of days, all those weird rivalry things that are going on between the two of them.
The fact that we're going to have a match now involving Bryson.
Yeah, with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. So this whole situation, and you have assholes like Piers Morgan who go on social media and basically say she's being a brat for admitting to mental health stigmas and saying that she should just shut up and hit the ball. And I don't understand. If you knew, and all 4 Grand Slams came out and made a joint statement. Now, I know you're in the journalism space, so this might hurt when I make this opinion a little bit, but I don't like when events or people in charge make joint written statements. I think
we would rather hear from the sources directly themselves.
But I'm saying putting a joint statement on paper is BS. Okay, it's literally just saying, "Oh, I don't want to talk, so I'm just going to make a generic statement so I don't have to be questioned."
No, that's fair. That's a fair point. It's actually that's like you didn't hurt me on all with that one.
I'm just trying to be careful because I know like some journalists. And by the way, the post-game press conference, which everyone complains about, and that's she didn't want to do the press. I think it's the worst interviews that are ever seen in television. All right, you played well. What was your winning strategy today? Oh, you played like shit. What happened out there?
All right, so to this point, I'll tell you that sometimes that's our only opportunity to talk to some of these guys and girls out there as athletes. Now, to that point about the 2 questions that you just said, that's because because of those complaints of that, those are the only questions. Like whenever I try to go into an interview with an athlete, I'll ask those kind of questions, like like for an MMA, like how are you getting ready to this fight? What's the one key thing? I'll ask some repetitive questions, but I'll also try to throw in something, unique, like a couple of different maybe potential angles for a story that, maybe some, other media members may not have known or aren't going to be thinking about, or angles that haven't been written about yet. Like like there's good in asking the simple questions, because sometimes asking those simple questions like the ones you just said sometimes do produce the best quotes, but then there are some times where you do need to prepare something. You should try to think of something that nobody has been talking about or nobody would think of.
Right. And I have to call out Roland Garros, which is the officials and the people at the French Open. You knew that she admitted openly in 2018 that she had these depression issues and anxiety issues. And instead of saying, when she came out before or after she won her first round match and said, it's too much anxiety for me. I don't like talking to the media. I don't think that was a shot at the media. I think it was just her dealing with her anxiety and depression issues.
Yeah, there's plenty of athletes out there who don't like talking to the media.
But they screwed up. Instead of saying, and I've said this quite a few times over the past couple of days, mediation. That's the big word I would use here. Why didn't you mediate this situation rather than saying, oh, you're not doing what we told you, $15,000 fine. And then you come out afterwards and you say in that joint statement from all the grants, well, we're here to provide all the tools needed.
That's BS.
You assholes. You assholes. You come out afterwards once you fine her $15,000 and you say, we're here to help. That's like a cat and mouse game. Why are you doing that? If you should have said, I'll provide that before you make the fine.
So I'll say now this is a point that I talked about with you guys in a pre-show meeting. So, but for those who may not understand this kind of issue, and when I questioned you about what would be the difference here between, say, this situation and, say, Kyrie Irving from your Brooklyn Nets about the lack of wanting to talk to the media, mental health, and all that.
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit also. But basically, I think in the NBA and in the NFL, I think it's contractually obligated with those guys. Like it actually says in their contracts, you have to speak to the media. I don't know how it works in tennis. I was
gonna say, because like now that ESPN airing tennis, does she have an obligation to talk to them as part of the media rights? I don't know.
Well, first of all, the only channel that I know only network that's taking in the French Open right now is the Tennis Channel, which
I find very bizarre.
It is bizarre. I've been trying to find the matches. I can't find them anywhere. And Tennis Channel is a paid channel, so you would have to get it if
right.
So I just thought that was bizarre. But at the same time, I think there's a fine line when it comes to mental health and anxiety issues. If someone is telling you openly from 2018 on that they have a depression issue, you need to respect it and not find the money. Or at least sit down and ask them what's going on in your head. How can we make it better?
I'd say now, since you know the tennis world better than I have any media, I'd say I'm not talking like channels, but like people she would talk to, like tennis journalists and tennis news thing, come out for her or say that we wish she would have talked to her. Like what has been that response?
The tour. Basically the tour saying that basically we respect it. You knew that Roland Garros was screwed when most of the tour came out and said, we're going to get behind her. That's what they did. And they said, take your time, figure out your situation and come back. Novak Djokovic, who's the number one seed on the tour, came out and said, I get it. I've been through my own situations. You remember we actually covered.
I remember that. So this is just the people behind the tennis organizations being major, you know what, D word.
And you know what's funny? That McEnroe came out and defended her.
For the fact that McEnroe, who has had a history on the court, comes out and defends Naomi Osaka, I think that kind of shows who's in the right and who's in the wrong here.
The way I'll leave it is that the French Open effed up in a major way
Yeah.
by fining her. They look bad in this situation, not her. Now, we could have a whole discussion on whether she could have used mental health to get out of talking about the press conferences. I don't think that's the issue here. But at the same time, she looks better because she admitted the problems that she had publicly. And it looks like the tournament didn't do anything to help her. So
Due diligence.
Right. So Roland Garros, do better. Otherwise, I don't know what to say at this point, but they screwed up.
All right, let's talk about the basketball world. So let's talk about this. So obviously we can throw in some opinions on what's going on the court while we talk about this, but I think the big news from this week is that Danny Ainge is going to be stepping down as president of the Celtics after your Brooklyn Nets defeated the Celtics to advance to the Eastern Conference semifinals. And now Brad Stevens, who was the head coach and has been a very successful head coach in spite of them not winning any championships, is all of a sudden now going to be promoted to the president of basketball operations. And now he has to pick his own replacement for the head coach.
Yeah, I need like one of those cartoon question marks that goes on the top of your head with this whole situation, because when I see this story and I'm like, all right, Danny Ainge, who's done it very well, he's been with the organization since he was a former player.
Yeah, I was a little shocked at Danny Ainge's resignation.
The team is kind of falling apart, though, at this point. There's a lot of issues going on within that organization, and they have some good young stars. They have Jason Tatum. They have Jaylen Brown when he comes back from the injury. But they could never take that final step. It was like the Rockets when James Harden was there. Or it's like the Clippers now, who somehow Kawhi decided to come and play last night and get 45 points and push the team to a Game 7. But this whole thing made me scratch my head. Brad Stevens, a head coach who has never won a championship. I don't think he's even made it to a final in the 7 or 8 seasons he's been a head coach.
No. I'll tell you, I think both the Celtics' appearance in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I think both was Doc. Yeah,
it was Doc. So this one's confusing. And now we talked about this in pre-show meetings that there's a controversy because Brad Stevens was picked and Stephen A. Smith, who went off on First Take, basically saying, where are the black candidates and
here's my thing about Stephen A. Smith, in that in one degree, and you said this too, that in one degree he is correct that there hasn't been many chances. There needs to be more chances for, black head coaches, and maybe the black players in the NBA aren't doing enough to, coming out in support of their of their black coaches and stuff. The issue here is he questioned where the black candidate. I don't think the Celtics had a plan. I don't think let me correct. I don't think the Celtics had another plan. I think the Celtics are so in, once Ainge was stepping down, on moving Stevens up, which, as we said, and we have said this time and time again, this is maybe not a really terrible decision, because just because you make a great player doesn't mean you make a great head coach. Just because you make a great head coach doesn't mean you're going to be a great executive. And just because you're a great executive doesn't mean you can come down on the floor and coach. Not everything is equal in the sports world.
I hate to use this horrible example as two Knicks fans that I usually do this show with. Do I have to say the words Phil Jackson?
No. Phil Jackson was great over in Los Angeles where they had the stars and everything. Phil Jackson couldn't take a Knicks team, and he basically destroyed it.
But it'll be interesting to transition from being down on the court to basically being in the executive office and seeing.
Yeah, but he has no front office experience.
Well, that's my point. I'm saying he doesn't have that. Now, we had talked about the numbers and the money. He's not doing that. They have some kind of Harvard or Princeton or Brown grad figuring this out. So they're not doing numbers.
That's it. But I was just going to say, you don't have to exactly have major league sport experience to be a successful, general manager. We're Yankee fans. Look at Brian Cashman. I don't think Brian Cashman played a season in the MLB.
Well, in Major League Baseball, it's a little different. Like, you actually need that executive experience, and you need that numbers game experience if you're going to make it. And
Okay, but
you don't see a lot of players transition into executive roles really in Major League Baseball as much.
Okay, but like in the NFL, we have some front office people who were, former players, but not every single one of them. And I'd say in the NBA, not every single front office person is a former player or former coach.
The one thing I will say, going back to the Stephen A. tirade and meltdown and walking off the First Take set, is he was saying, comparing this to the Rooney Rule in the NFL. And I think he's right about that in one instance.
The Rooney Rule doesn't work, right?
The Rooney Rule doesn't work, but there's no rule in the NBA whatsoever. So it doesn't matter what these teams do in the NBA because there is no rule.
I was going to say, so then try to institute some sort of Rooney Rule.
It's not going to matter, though, because they're not going to follow it anyway. Or they'll do what they do in the NFL. All right, we interviewed somebody. Now
we have to use draft picks to incentivize.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about that. I was talking about, and I hate to use this phrase because it's a little politically incorrect, but it's called the token black guy or the token black woman that they interview. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm saying,
as in, oh, look, we followed the rule. We followed the rule.
That's my point. That's what I'm trying to say. That, all right, we interviewed somebody to succeed the rule, the Rooney Rule. Now we can do what we want. So, and there are a lot of, and Stephen A was right. There's guys like Sam Cassell who have been in the NBA for years. Was he a star player? No. Was he a really, really good player? Yes. And he has the experience. I mean, he's right. But at the same time, I don't like the way that he got to the reasoning of it.
And he is right, but I don't think it's going to apply to this example because, again, like I said, I don't think the Celtics had another plan. I think the Celtics' plan, once Ainge was going to resign, was Brad Stevens was going to move up. As I say, now I'm not saying that's the right plan. I'm very criticizing this plan. I think it's wrong that you're going to take a head coach with no front office experience and all of a sudden make him, in charge of the whole organization outside of ownership. I don't know who you're going to get to succeed coaching because remember, Doc Rivers and Brad Stevens have been the only coaches for the Celtics since the mid 2000s?
Yeah, like mid to almost early 2000s. Yeah.
And again, maybe they haven't had the success of, say, the 80s Celtics, but still reached two finals. They reached two finals. They won one in those 16, 17 years. They've still been a constant present in the Eastern Conference during that time. Like Stevens and Doc, I won't say anything bad about their head coaching experience. I won't say anything bad about their skills, but Brad Stevens moving up to an executive role, and now you have to try to find somebody to match what Brad Stevens and Doc Rivers have done in the last 17. They're setting themselves up for a really tough challenge that I'm not sure the Celtics can conquer.
I'll give you one step further. I think they moved Brad Stevens up to the executive role because they didn't want to get rid of him.
I could see that.
I think they put him up there because they said, all right, we like him. We don't want to fire him. We'll just put him up in the office and we'll give him like busy work to do or something.
But then why don't you use the term like the Yankees love to use, advisor?
Oh, you mean like CC and A-Rod and Nick Swisher? Right. I can go down the whole list of former Yankees or World Series team. But I want to read the one part that I put in that tweet when I quoted the Stephen A. Smith situation. And I wrote, the bottom of it says, the question is, who were the other candidates to replace Danny Ainge? And that's missing here in that equation.
Right. And again, because I'm telling you, I don't think they had another plan.
No, it's because they didn't want to do their due diligences with everybody else.
But no, I think we're arguing the same point on that. They don't have another plan. That Brad Stevens was their guy.
But speaking of Celtics, I want to go one more step further, which is, so Kyrie Irving with the Nets, they just mauled the Celtics in their for round one of the playoffs.
Right.
And people are upset because Kyrie Irving stomped on the logo at midcourt.
Oh, that.
And we had an incident with Kyrie Irving where a water bottle was thrown at him. By the way, they made a huge point against this guy. They arrested this guy and charged him with like aggravated violent weapon or something. It was insane. And
I'll say, I'm not sure if I mentioned this on Twitter. That's like the NBA with some of their stuff like the fans are doing right now, and the whole mess over stomping on a logo. The NBA is just rubbing me the wrong way.
To be quite honest, and I've said this a few times in the past couple of days, also, it's not a popular opinion. I think they should ban the NBA fans for the rest of the playoffs. I really do. Because these fans don't know how to behave.
Like, just because we're out and in arenas for the first time in over a year, like that doesn't excuse intolerable behavior.
There's one other thing, and one of my good friends pointed this out to me. Do you know that little bit of writing that's on the bottom of a ticket?
Yeah,
you
don't have. You might have paid for a ticket, but you can lose the right to be in the arena.
Now, for people, these fans who are as dumb as rocks, so we tell people that when you buy a ticket, regardless if you buy it from within the team or you buy it on a StubHub or wherever you buy from, there's something called fine print. Okay,
right.
When you buy a ticket, the team has the right to remove you at any state or time that you do something moronic. So if you throw a water bottle, your ticket could get revoked.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, Kyrie Irving is a douche. And I have no problem saying that because you don't stomp on the logo. As much as you hate the organization, and it also came out that apparently he thinks Boston is a racist town. I don't understand why.
Well, we've had some history between Kyrie and the Celtics from their tenure. I say, and don't say you don't understand why. We've seen Boston be real.
No, I know that. No, but I'm saying with him, I don't understand. Like it's a little.
Okay. But I was going to say, remember Adam Jones with the Orioles?
That I remember. But I just meant with him generally. That I think that he's got something going on in his head that it's like him versus the world, and we've seen it. Like the whole press conference on the Yes Network, where he's like, "Well, basketball's not the most important thing to me right now," and he was more worried about the attacks overseas or what was going on overseas than you're playing a game making $30 million plus. What do you mean it's not the most important thing to you? It's your job. That's what I don't get. So you stomp on the logo. Part of it is your personality is not good.
Well, here's my thing about the logo, because there are instances like in hockey, like there's a rule, basically a superstition. You don't step on your logo as you're walking across, the locker room. You always go around it.
Same thing with baseball. You don't step on the foul line.
But I feel like this whole thing has blown up. Like this is a whole massive drama that doesn't need to be as dramatic as it is. And part of that is Kyrie, and part of that is the NBA fans being the absolute biggest,
right?
Pieces of crap after, because coming back and just the fact that that this fan was arrested, and the fact that the Knicks, the 76ers, and I think the Jazz have all had to ban fans during this postseason. I think that's a really bad look about the fans.
Now, the one thing I will say is there's no excuse for fans throwing stuff.
No.
There's no excuse. If you have to throw stuff at a game, you don't deserve to be at any NBA arena, period, or any sports stadium, arena, wherever you want to call it, period. But if you're a douche like Kyrie, then we've seen he's got a past. He's done things in the past.
Yeah, but that doesn't excuse throwing popcorn and bottles at him.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the people who threw stuff, they're bad people. They don't deserve to go to games anymore. But at the same time, Kyrie has done things which has rubbed people the wrong way at the same time. So I'm not excusing it. They're wrong. The person got, first of all, the kid was 21 years old, the one who threw the bottle. So you have to think there's a little jackassery going on in the stands.
I'll say congratulations on probably losing the right to go to NBA games for the rest of your 60, 70 years on Earth.
Pretty much, yeah. So at the same time, just everyone needs to calm down. I would ban the fans, but that we know that's not going to happen.
No, I'd say, and again, the NBA has just handled the COVID situation the worst way this season. I think, and I will end on this note, and I think I said this before, we had the projection, like the NBA last year or 2 years ago, we said the NBA within a few years could overtake NFL as the most popular sport in America. I think after the last couple of seasons, I don't think that's going to happen now.
Well, I agree. At the same time, I would say COVID kind of had a little bit of a say in that. But at the same time,
some of that could have been avoided had they not handled the COVID.
Agreed.
Like the NBA has shot itself in the foot in some circumstances.
Well, it's the NBA, nothing but Adam.
All right, very quickly, give me your thoughts on a couple of news items that have broken in the last 24 hours. Actually, one of them, the latter one, coming like within the last, I'd say 5-6 hours.
Yeah, this was
the Trailblazers first parting ways with Terry Stotts last night, and then earlier this morning, the Magic agreeing to part ways with Steve Clifford.
Oh, I didn't see the second one. I saw the first one.
Magic so just give me your thoughts, Mr. NBA.
Terry Stotts has been with the organization as a head coach for 7 or 8 years. It was probably just time because, again, they're another team like the Rockets where basically everyone touts them up as, oh, they're going to be amazing. And Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum, and they're a big, big team. And then they get to either the first round or the conference finals, and they just don't progress. So...
And who says that? And who says the team Lillard and McCollum are even going to be sticking around?
Well, Dame is under contract, so it would have to be a trade if he goes anywhere. Now, you're going to find this hilarious. Did you see who he wanted for the head coach?
Who?
Jason Kidd.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if that was, when your star, this is any organization. Look what happened with Dwight Howard back in the day with Stan Van Gundy.
Stan Van Gundy, oh my God, I hated that rivalry. So much.
It all depends who your star is. Look what happened with Durant, Kyrie, and who am I leaving out there? James Harden. That basically they got a guy with no coaching experience, and Steve Nash. I mean,
I was gonna say, it's an example of players from the league. Look at LeBron and Ty Lue.
Yeah, but I think it was time for Stotts to go. I don't think it was his fault. I just think the team didn't perform all the way to the end. So I don't know if I like the whole Jason Kidd move after the failure that happened in Milwaukee.
Again, just because you make a great one, you're great in one area, like player or coaching, doesn't mean you're going to have success in another area.
Don't get me wrong; he's a Hall of Fame player, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely.
But he was terrible as the head coach of the Bucks. So, I mean, would it help to have a Dame Lillard and a CJ McCollum there? Yeah, obviously. But here's the deal. If they don't bring in Jason Kidd like Dame Lillard asked, you do what your star player asks you. If you don't, and say you bring in somebody else who goes 1-10 to start, that coach is going to be gone, and Dame Lillard's going to be demanding a trade right after it. Let's see, the Steve Clifford move.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess this is your first reaction because you're just finding out about this.
The Magic have been terrible for years. I mean, there's really no answer. It's kind of like the Baltimore Orioles in Major League Baseball. They're just going to keep going through coaches and managers, and
it's like you expect them to be on a 15-game losing streak.
I mean, they haven't done anything since Dwight Howard's been in an Orlando Magic uniform.
Yeah,
and they traded away Aaron Gordon, who now is on the Nuggets, who are in the conference finals now. Dangerous team to watch, but they're going to keep trading away their stars because they can't afford it because they're not winning anything.
And because I'm the only Knicks fan here, I'll say, you know what? I'm happy. I disagree with your comments on Twitter. I consider it a successful season. The fact that this team was only supposed to win 22 games. They ended up winning like double that, with a number 4 seed, and got to the playoffs as a 4 seed. Now, yes, there's disappointment that they lost 4 games to 1. Trae Young, though, Trae Young is a
stud. He's a stud.
He's a stud. There's no shame in losing to a stud.
Yeah, but at the same time, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the Mavericks are regretting trading away that stud as much as Luka Doncic is unbelievable himself.
They lost to Clint Capella at the center position. Okay, that's where I have my issues. Where the Knicks, by the way, first of all, I think Vegas got that number way wrong. By the way, at the beginning of the season, they were going to win more than 22 games. They had one of their better cores for the first time in 5 or 6 years. So I think
you actually had more faith than me, who was a Knicks fan.
Yeah, I think Vegas totally underestimated. I would have been First of all, when I saw that 22, I would have gone over. I would have been over by a lot, by a long shot.
Yeah, you would have been over by a long shot, but I would have taken the over too, but I would only because 25-26.
But they have a core that's going to be with them for the next 4 or 5 years for a change now.
You say that, and then James Dolan's going to screw something up.
Well, you're not going to trade the rookies, the ones that they just got out of the draft. You're not going to trade those. So now Julius Randle, that's a whole different question for a whole nother day. But you're going to start hearing the rumors Dame Lillard to the Knicks. Now,
Dame Lillard, Bradley Beal.
if you get Dame Lillard, you're off to the races at that point. But I don't think it's going to happen.
I say, but what are you going to trade though? That's the thing. You say you're not going to trade any rookies, but for Dame Lillard,
they might. I mean,
okay, all right. So now, I say, well, just to move things along, take a minute, celebrate. LeBron's out.
yes. Wait a minute. You can say Adam Silver is living rent free in LeBron James's head. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, LeBron, no one gives a crap if you're in the playoffs anymore. We have players that are more exciting than your. I can't say that.
Okay, but can I ask, as an NBA fan, more of an NBA fan, is this not interesting? Because the Lakers, the Heat, the two teams who were in last year's finals, the Knicks, who were one of the biggest stories of this season, the Portland Trail Blazers, because all of them are out first round.
Bubble.
You think most of the success had to do with the bubble?
When you stay in one spot and you don't have to travel as much as you have to, and you get used to the confines of a place, you're not going to be tired as much. All you're doing is playing basketball, going back to your room or eating or whatever. So the Lakers, I put an asterisk on the Lakers last year as the champions. The Heat, by the way, were a complete abomination. They got swept, but the Bucks are one of the better teams in the NBA. But again, they're like the Rockets. They're going to have to figure it out because so far they don't get to the promised land.
So then, as a Nets fan, can I ask you, considering the fact that the only teams left as like contenders right now, let's say the 76ers, the Nets, the Bucks, the Jazz, maybe the Suns, as a Nets fan, now that the big names like the Lakers, the Knicks, the Heat are all out, is this a must-win? Is this a must-win now? Will you consider? Yeah, for the Nets, will you consider this? Like we said, it's a must-win because over the next 2 years because of the contracts and everything. But like considering the circumstances of these playoffs right now, is this like if they don't win, it's a failure? I'm asking you as a Nets fan.
It's a tough. First of all, I don't think you can guarantee anything. I whenever someone says guarantee, they have to win. It sounds a little bit dumb. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying people in the media who say they have to win in the next 2 or 3 years. Okay, that's fine. They need to win, but they have to want to win. And they would have to want to put in the work to win. So, first of all, the Nets, with the Lakers out now, the Nets are probably way more at the top now because I look at the teams in the West. Denver is going to be a tough team. I think they could demolish Denver, but Denver's a tough team. The Jazz are no competition for the Nets. I'm sorry. Even though they were the number one overall seed in the whole NBA, they're not a competition to the Nets. I'm sorry.
Okay, what about your main competitors, though, like the Bucks and the 76ers?
Joel Embiid went down with an injury. He's still not 100% healthy. If he's not there at 100%, they're going to destroy the Sixers.
Okay, then what about the Bucks? And Tony Kornheiser made this point yesterday. It seems like when they have a team with a star like Giannis, and like they go out first round or second round, somehow they're always back even harder than before the next year.
The Bucks are their one competition, in my opinion, where those games so far between the Nets and the Bucks have been the most competitive games for them. Where basically, if Giannis is going to have to play well for 6 games or 7 games if they want to stay in that series. If they don't, they're going to get demolished, and they might even lose in 5 games if he doesn't play well. So it's pretty much the Nets to win. I'm not going to guarantee it, but it's the Nets to win.
Right. But as I was saying, but this is probably their best opportunity that they could have ever asked for.
They have the best trio in the NBA. I know that's a high praise.
I know. Okay, but I'm just saying, like, in my opinion, this is the chance for like Harden to erase his postseason doubts. This is the chance for Kyrie to shake off some of that jerkiness, basically to say, hey, it was worth it. And this is the chance for Durant to say, hey, I can lead a team as the number one. Because I always feel like with Golden State, it was always Curry's team.
He was never the number one in Golden State.
Right. No, but I'm saying, this is the opportunity for these three guys. The golden opportunity. It's right there. Now you have to take it.
You know what? It's interesting, and I know we got to move on for time, but I'll say that this kind of reminds me of the Celtics with Garnett, Pierce, and Allen before Allen went to the Miami Heat and totally smoked them in the playoffs with that 3-pointer.
It's their time to shine.
But I think they're actually playing as a team, though. Believe it or not, it's not just one guy.
No, I'm saying it's their time to shine, and they have to make the most of it.
That's why LeBron was a failure, and I have no problem saying that, a failure, because Anthony Davis, which, by the way, the doctors completely effed up, putting him out on the court in Game 6. What a mistake that was. He was not right. That groin injury looked terrible out there.
And I was say, you and I have our disagreements about LeBron, but I think this series showed just how much Anthony Davis means to that team.
And people are going to yell at me for this. Anthony Davis is more important than LeBron James. The reason he's more important, he's the centerpiece of that starting lineup. LeBron is good, but he's 36 years old. He's got miles and miles and miles on those legs. I don't know how much you watched of the series, but he could not get to the rim. He was settling for more jump shots in that series than I've seen in years. And by the way, this is the first round exit for him as well.
Yep. Unbelievable, man. Like I just said, it's a very weird second round, just based on how many teams and the kind of teams that went out first round.
And I'll finish on this last thing. It'll be nice to see a newer team win.
It's going to be an interesting postseason, rest of the postseason. All right, very quickly here. Let's talk about a horse you rode in on. So Medina Spirit has tested positive for banned substances for a second time. That horse now faces disqualification for the Kentucky Derby. Any bettors, however, who put money on the Kentucky Derby are screwed. The betting books are not going to do refunds or anything. But
they're not going to refund, and they're not going to pay out.
But Bob Baffert has been suspended for 2 years.
Oh, really? Didn't see that one coming. I mean, I said this in pre-show meetings that
he had a history.
He's got a history. He's got a past. He's got a dirty past. And now he's trying to say, well, I'm going to fight this. I want mediation. There's that word again, where I think we should be exonerated. And I'm like, no.
No, I was going to say, no. So no mediation for the biggest star in the tennis world, but big mediation possibly for the biggest star in horse racing. Makes no sense whatsoever.
So basically, someone took cough syrup and basically said, I'm going to piss on this victory. And basically, from that, you took a dump on Bob Baffert's career.
Way to go. All right. WWE. So we had another round of cuts, and a couple of them pretty shocking. Braun Strowman, a former Universal Champion, who was just competing in the WWE title main event just a couple of weeks ago. Aleister Black, who just returned to TV just a couple of weeks ago. So you see these cuts, and you're thinking, more of because we know the WWE. We talked about this last year when the first cuts happened after the pandemic. How the WWE has money in the bank. They have money under the table, under the bed sheets. But now we are hearing rumors, which we've had these kinds of rumors for like years now. But considering the circumstances like Braun Strowman's release, they have gone from whispers to shout rumors of a potential sale. So now, obviously, we don't have all the time to get into these details, but doing my research as the WWE guy and everything, the combat guy, so you know about All Elite Wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Their first big competition since the end of the WCW.
Well, they're taking over now as like the big name, right? Because I've been seeing their commercials all over the place.
Well, they're the Turner brand now, and they have the owners. Their ownership is Tony Khan, the Khan family of the Jacksonville Jaguars. You saw that Urban Meyer cameo at their most recent pay-per-view, right?
That's going to end so well for AEW having the Jaguars owner as their name of brand.
I'm telling you, they're going to bring Cody Rhodes as the wide receiver. I can't wait. All right.
On the road again.
So some of these circumstances with the WWE, from my research, actually have gone back to before the pandemic. So in January 2020, they asked George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, who were their vice presidents at the time. Apparently, they and Vince McMahon had different visions. Barrios and Wilson, they wanted the network to succeed. They wanted basically a tight money ship. Vince wanted, this is going to sound familiar of you because you remembered some of these WCW days as much as we are not the combat. He wanted to pay big contracts and basically bloat the roster in an attempt to prevent any of these guys and girls from going over to AEW. Then, of course, the pandemic happened. And in August of 2020, they brought in Nick Khan, who is of CAA.
Yeah.
From the CAA. And basically, Vince and company supposedly have given Nick Khan, and I'm going to attribute this to What Culture and all their sources, basically have given Nick Khan, do what you need to do to make the WWE that mainstream brand again that we remember from the 90s, just without the, the TNA and everything.
Yeah, but what's so weird about this whole thing, like you were saying, that it just seems like you're trying to cut payroll like they do in sports.
Oh, what they're doing, I'm telling you, like one of the ideas, and I think somebody on Twitter had made this point, it seems like they're cutting, the contracts, like Braun Strowman is millions of dollars contract, to make profits seem even bigger than what they already are. And they are already big. They got a $1 billion deal with Fox for SmackDown recently.
Well, yeah, and they just got the deal with
Peacock.
Yeah,
that for billions of dollars.
Now, by the way, you were asking me what I thought about the multiple because we were talking about that. Now, we've seen a bunch of streaming deals. We've seen gambling money. We've seen it all. Now, what was the one you were comparing it to when you asked me about the multiple? Do you remember?
What do you mean? Like DraftKings?
We were talking. No, because we were talking about how much would WWE sell for.
Because I said that WWE. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That WWE net worth was like $5 billion, and you said it'd be double that.
No, I said it would be like 3 or 4 times maybe that. So,
and yet there's a shocking. Okay, so as I was saying, so obviously trying to advance. So now there's these rumors of potential suitors for WWE. We've heard NBC and Peacock, because remember, NBC is the streaming service. They have the WWE network now. Basically, the only show that they don't have the rights to is SmackDown, which is on Fox.
Which is what I told you. I thought that was a little odd because the branding's sake. But.
Yeah, but WWE kind of wants to spread itself. So actually, WWE told WWE sources told Front Office Sports that WWE basically wants to become the next Marvel, which actually is sounds strange, but when you consider Vince McMahon, he has always wanted the WWE to be more than just the wrestling brand. I think What Culture said it best. There's not so much an appreciation for the second W and more of an appreciation inside WWE for the E, the entertainment.
No, and so basically what you're saying is to expand the brand, because Marvel has all these different spin-off movie brands. Yeah. Right.
But I mean, you've seen that WWE movies like John Cena, The Miz, they're all stars. The Rock went from star wrestler to the biggest name in Hollywood now.
Yeah, if it wasn't for The Rock and John Cena, where would this brand really be? I mean,
you can even stretch it to the golden age. Remember Hulk Hogan and The Rock and Wrestling Connection, Cyndi Lauper and all of them.
First of all, though, like if that's true that they're talking 2-3 multiple, so we're talking like 15 billion, 16 billion.
But no, the number I heard for NBC Universal was only 4.2 billion. Around the pricing point that the UFC was bought.
They're not going to sell then. They're not going to sell. They just won't. It's not enough money for them.
I'd say, but the only report I had heard about NBC Universal, it might be more than 4. Like it'll be 4 for the company, and then the rumor is they're going to bide their time and then make a big offer to Fox to basically buy the rights from SmackDown, take them off Fox, and put them exclusively on Peacock.
And I told you, I don't think that's going to happen because they're already under contract. So I don't think they're just going to rip them off there.
Okay, so I'll just end by saying this. I don't, I was always of the belief that Vince McMahon would never sell. I was always of the belief that Vince McMahon would be the main number one person in that company until the day he dies.
However,
I know, but I'm saying, considering these circumstances, you can believe that still that Vince McMahon, will be the number one guy until he dies and not sell. But to say that he's never going to sell and not consider the possibility at all, I think that's business-wise ignorant. Well, you got to consider the possibility now.
That goes back to my point of what I said earlier, that you can't guarantee anything.
Right.
It's the same thing. You can't say never, but at the same time, I don't see it.
All right. Very quickly now. So MLB is facing a $100 million lawsuit over the decision to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. It's this conservative group is basically going to be
Job Creators Network saying that Atlanta has lost so many jobs and everything because of the decision to move. It's a game. It's one game. Stop. This is a joke. I'm sorry.
But it doesn't surprise me, though. When you make a big move like this, in Major League Sports, you see lawsuits like this. It's not surprising.
This is what I like to call a petty lawsuit. Even though $100 million is a lot of money, this is what I call a petty lawsuit. Because basically this is a CEO, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he's like, well, small business this and hotel. First of all, I don't know where they got all these numbers from, but we lost 8,000 hotel reservations, and they usually pay $2 million, and then they make between $90 million and $130 million. And
Bernie Marcus, the co-founder of Home Depot.
God, talk about someone who's got political aspirations, but it's a petty lawsuit. It's going to get thrown out.
I'd say whether or not you agree with the decision to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta, this is the case that's going to get thrown out.
This has nothing to do with the move. This has to do with someone who's trying to make an ant out of a molehill at this point.
And MLB is a business, it has the right, I assume, to move games if based on decisions. Whether you agree or disagree or not, this lawsuit's not going to stand.
Like I said, it's a petty lawsuit.
All right, so there's this Diamondbacks announcer who made fun of Marcus Stroman for wearing a do-rag, comparing
Bob
it to
Friendly.
Bob Friendly, comparing it to, he's like, oh, the do-rag Tom Seaver wore, and it was kind of mocking Stroman and everything. It just comes off really, really bad.
What do we have to do to stop announcers in Major League Baseball from saying dumb shit?
Remember Tom Brenneman?
That's my point. That's where I was going. That pitch to Castellanos, home run.
And I'm not sure if I'll ever wear this headset again, whether it's for the Reds or my boss is at Fox.
But what do we have to do to stop baseball announcers from saying what's in their actual mind?
Rule number 1, be careful with what you say. Rule number 2, assume your microphone is hot all the time.
I mean, unfortunately, and for some reason they didn't suspend him. They just did mediation. And
they're going to do sensitivity training.
You know what? I'm going to name this episode Mediation because that's where we're going in this episode. So you're willing to do mediation for that.
But not for the biggest star of tennis.
You're not willing to do mediation for mental health. Okay, I got it. I got it, World of Sports. I see where we're going here.
All right, one last story, and kind of a big story, but something to talk about. Coach K. We don't really talk about college basketball or college sports all too often, but Coach K is going to be hanging it up after this season.
After 42 seasons with the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah. Mike Krzyzewski is going to be retiring. And, we're young guys. We're still in our 20s. All our life, all we've known is with Duke, Coach K. And now for the first time, we're going to have to face a reality of no Coach K with Duke.
No Coach K, no Roy Williams, North Carolina, Jim Boeheim, all these guys that we knew through the years. Now, just be ready, though, because this is going to be the year-long Coach K retirement tour. Just throwing that out there. Oh, you're so amazing! We need to do all the video tributes for you!
Just like we did with Derek Jeter and Kobe Bryant and Big Papi and Mariano.
I don't know. Do you understand the video tributes, like the year-long retirement tours? I just...
it was fine with Mo. It was fine with Jeter. I was fine with it with Kobe. I just don't want it to become a running thing.
I can't wait to see what happens when LeBron retires.
Oh, I'd say he'll pen a piece in like the Athletic or something,
Or the
saying
Players
it's his last-
Tribune,
or the
or-
Players Tribune, and saying it's his last season and he'll get the tour.
Well, actually, wait. He has his own thing. What is it? Uninterrupted, I think it's called, or whatever. He
True.
owns that.
I'd say, but I wouldn't throw out something like Players Tribune. I mean, he and Jeter are buddies, aren't they? Or no, he and Jordan are buddies.
No, him and
Jeter and Jordan are buddies.
God, that was like that statement you made in the last episode. Look in the mirror, LeBron. You're turning into someone you hate. It's Michael Jordan.
But again, I wouldn't. He'll put it in some piece. Maybe even Sports Illustrated. He'll pen the piece that says, farewell.
The same Sports Illustrated that's going to bring back Mickey Callaway with a big S on his chest for superhero.
Oh God, don't say that.
No, trust me, I don't want it to happen. I hope he never gets back in the sport. But that's neither here nor there.
All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of Empty the Bench. Make sure to follow us at ETV Sports across our social medias. You can see our social medias, our personal social medias, scrolling across the bottom. And, of course, make sure to leave us a follow here on Twitch and make sure to subscribe. We're on every Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific.
Yes, please subscribe or else I'm coming to your house and I'm beating you up.
And stay tuned to our social medias because I will be making an appearance on a podcast very early next week. I'm not exactly sure of the dates. I know we're recording it on Monday night, but I'm thinking maybe Tuesday it'll be up. It's going to be the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. So follow us on our socials and we'll give you all the details on how to tune into that.
I thought you were going according to Woods. That's the one I know that you go on, isn't it?
Well, me and Wood. Actually, next week is UFC 263, so me and Woodsy will be on next week at some point. After
Yeah, because I see you on there all the time.
So me and Woodsy will be on next week previewing UFC 263. Before
should bring him on
starts.
here. Should bring him on here.
You should. I mean, the WWE cuts. Maybe some point soon we'll have him on.
Because I'd be interested in talking to him. I've watched some of the stuff, so yeah.
Cool. All right. But that's going to do it for us. For Nick Morgeson, I'm Tom Albano. We'll see you next week for Empty the Bench. Until then, take care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.